Right, we're going to be discussing director of football. Thanks to Andy, myself, and Gonzo have recorded Mug of Tea over on Patreon. So we fancy a 1 hour long podcast on myself and Gonzo discussing various topics around West Ham. Get over to patreon.com/Hamish Chat. Andy's question was: is it better to have a director of football hired by the club or hired by the manager? We have had both. What are your thoughts? And he's been very kind and said, thanks for all you do.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. It has to be hired by the club because we don't have to think that. But if you would, I think it's probably just beneficial that the hierarchy is structured in a way that the director of football is the boss. And if that's the case, then you can't have the employee picking the boss because human nature dictates that you'll make it as easy as you can for yourself. You're not going to pick someone that's going to ask the tough questions, and realistically, that's just what's got to happen here. In many respects, I'm a little bit disappointed. Well, more than a little bit disappointed that West Ham have decided to ditch even trying. And I do understand why, but I don't think we've given it a proper try and a proper go, or at least the two examples that we've got, if you would concede that was Huselos and Steidten, are not really good examples of directors of football. One of them was brought in by the manager, which we've already explained why I don't think that's a good idea. And Steidten wasn't a director of football. It was his first go at it. So he was obviously going to make mistakes. I think if you're going to decide that what you want to do is not go with this model at all, I can't remember the bloke that Arsenal have just hired, but Arsenal just hired a proper sporting director, basically. I think if you do that, and you've done that a couple of times and it fails, that you've actually gone and hired people who in European football have got a track record of not only finding players, but building a department and hiring coaches, which is really, that's what I would assume the remit to be of a director of football. If you do that and it fails, then I can understand you thinking, well, do you know what? I've tried. We've had a go and it hasn't really worked out for us. But I feel they were half measures. And even with Steidten, he was never fully allowed to hire the coach. Well, no, not even fully allowed, wasn't even remotely allowed to hire a coach. Under Tim Steidten, we hired two coaches, neither of which were Tim Steidten's pick. Also, he never had full control over signing the players. There was a bit of a pick a mix job going on in the last summer with Sullivan having a go and Lopetegui having a go. I do think he's made mistakes. I understand that, but I think the types of mistakes he makes, I'm going to mitigate both of them. So let's go with the Ibrahim Osman one, where he was negotiating with the wrong people. I think if you're experienced, you don't do that, right? So I think we can park that one. The other one, I think, is really, really easy. So I don't doubt for a second that he fell out with Lopetegui and Moyes. I don't think it's a lie. And I don't think it's great that a director of football gets banned by two consecutive coaches from the training ground or the dressing room, or whatever you think it is. Maybe it was both in both instances. I think firstly, I don't reckon if you're actually implementing a proper director of football in the way that it should be implemented, I don't recognise his power to do so. So you shouldn't have a situation where the coach can ban the director of football from the training ground. The director of football saying, hold on, mate, it's my bloody training ground. I'll ban you if I want to, but you don't ban me. And I think when you've undermined his power, you can't do that. But I also think that those situations never, ever manifest themselves if you allow the director of football to pick the coaches. So I don't know. I've never met Tim Steidten, but I would imagine if Tim Steidten was interested in Hursler, was he not? Was that one of the rumours?
One of the rumours, yeah.
I'm guessing if that was true and he appoints Hursler, there's no falling out. I also think it probably, if you decide that I think the crossover didn't help. I think you get the director of football after you get rid of Moyes, if that's what you're going to do. I think because then you don't get that falling out as well. So I think there's lots of reasons. I just don't think it's black and white. I think it's very, very nuanced. And I think you can probably pick your way through it quite a lot, Gio, really.
Yeah, I don't think it matters when you got David Sullivan at the football club.
Mm.
Ultimately, I don't think it matters if you get someone in which is like Tim Steidten-esque, which is separate to essentially what Andy's asking is, do you want the club to pick the guy in charge, or do you want the manager to pick the guy in charge of effectively the transfer window, really? Because it doesn't matter if the club picks him, it's still David Sullivan in charge, and if the manager picks him, it's still David Sullivan in charge. And I think that's the biggest issue that we've got now. To answer the question, ideally I'd like the club to have selected the person, and that person selects the head coach, but that also doesn't happen because David Sullivan picks the head coach. So it almost doesn't really matter what the job title is or what the role is, because ultimately the biggest barrier is the one with the power at the club that makes the decisions at the club and makes the incorrect decisions at the club. And he's the one that makes it difficult, bordering on impossible, to do the role that you're employed for. We can take a look at all the different people that we've had. We had Huselos, who I wouldn't say he was a director of football. I'd say he was a head scout. Admittedly, I can't recall. I don't remember him being in charge of negotiating deals for players. I think he was more the identifier of talent, in which is, hey, Sullivan, we want this guy, go get him. Then we had Rob Newman under David Moyes. I thought that worked quite well, actually. Moyes picked Rob Newman. How many issues did we have with Moyes and Rob Newman? I would say none.
No, but he was a scout, though.
He was a scout, but that's my point. His role was head scout, but it worked. The negotiating was left ultimately to David Sullivan.
Yeah.
We had Tony Henry. Less said about that, the better, really. But again, another head scout, really. And then we had Tim Steidten, and this is the big one because I think this was the first person to have power at West Ham. But the issue was he and Moyes, my interpretation of it, were both given power. And there wasn't really much clarity provided by David Sullivan as to who was in charge. So it was just almost like an argument as to who was in charge. It resulted in Moyes leaving, Tim Steidten getting more power in the summer. But he still wasn't given enough. He still wasn't given free rein. And this is where I think he was almost given the job of a director of football and the job of a head scout. And I think it was too much. He was allowed to identify the players, and then he was allowed to go and negotiate the deals for the players. But he also had to take into consideration the people that Lopetegui wanted and the people that David Sullivan wanted. And to me, a director of football is more someone that oversees the running of everything. He has a scouting department. He has an analysis department. He has a management team. He's the one that calls everyone in for the meeting. He's the one that liaises between these departments and ultimately makes the final decision based on recommendations as to whom the football club is going to go get. And what I will say about Steidten was I thought he was a really good negotiator. For something that wasn't really something that he did at Leverkusen, that was down to Simon Rolfes. I thought Steidten was really good at going and getting the players. He might have overpaid, but that's what made him good at it. He was willing to go there and get that deal done. And you've seen it with, I think the Todibo deal was the one that impressed me quite a lot. You know, the Juventus thing, and it was almost like, I'm not giving up. I'm getting that. I want that player. I'm determined to get that player, and I'm going to go get him. And he managed it. Same with Kudus. Brighton failed to get him. Chelsea wanted to get him. He came to West Ham. I don't know. It's hypothetical, but I would happily put money on it. Not with Floralist because he wouldn't pay up, but I'd happily put money on it. If David Sullivan was in charge of the negotiations with Ajax and Kudus, we wouldn't have signed Mohamed Kudus.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think Steidten was good at that aspect of the job. I just think it was far too fragmented. You must get someone for Lopetegui. Oh, and by the way, I want Somerville. You've got to go get him. Oh, and by the way, this guy wants. We've got to keep him sweet. He's got Wan-Bissaka for us. You've got to get him in as well. By the end of it, like half the budget's gone to some extent. It's like you're in charge of the budget, but we're telling you how to spend at least half the budget as well. He's not really in charge of the budget then, is he? He's just in charge of getting the deals done. And there was almost a pressure that we had to have Max Kilman because Lopetegui was allowed someone, so you had to go get Max Kilman. I would be, again, can't prove it. I would be surprised if Steidten was comfortable spending 40 million on Max Kilman, the player. But he had to, because that's what we do at West Ham United. So he had to go get Max Kilman for 40 million, which then handcuffs him later on in the transfer. You want Todibo? Todibo's less than Max Kilman. but we couldn't pay for him there and then because we'd signed Max Kilman instead. We had to then do this deal that we got him on loan and we'd sign him this summer. So to summarise, I would rather have a director of football, but it would require Sullivan getting the hell away from it altogether, and he won't do that. He's never done that. He never will do that. And I'm genuinely worried about this summer. I think we've got possibly have a really good person in Kyle McCauley that's good at identifying good talent. I don't know for sure, but there's a reason Potter brings him everywhere he goes, and the recruitment at Brighton was good. However, the recruitment at Chelsea, not so good. Did he have a hand in that? I don't know. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he's good at what he does. But here's the problem. Who is going to go and do the negotiations? Sullivan / Brady. We've literally just seen this week the deal with Banzuzi. He's away to Leipzig. We failed to get him in January. What's the price difference? Less than 2 million. Yeah. We lost a target for less than 2 million. I'll tell you what, that wouldn't have happened under Tim Steidten. Banzuzi would have been a West Ham United player in January. He would have been playing for us already. Because he would have thought, right, okay, it's not ideal. We've got to pay more than what we want, but it gets our guy the main transfer target. Let's go get him. So yeah, I think I prefer this that way. I think Steiden's biggest issue, I think the one thing he did wrong the most was he implemented sort of the German way on an English football club. You know, him being on the training ground, him being on the pitch before games. It's something to do in Germany a lot.
Yeah.
Because his reasoning is, I need to know what's happening. I need to know that everyone's performing the jobs. I don't think English football is quite ready for that, especially when you're working with perhaps old school managers like David Moyes, who has possibly never had that before. And anyone in charge of transfers usually is at a completely different facility. He's on the training ground, and the manager or the chairman or whatever is at the football ground doing the business. So I think was unusual. I think it would have put noses out of joint. Not just Moyes. I bet you that put Kevin Nolan's nose out of joint as well. Someone that's come through English football and stuff, and then suddenly you've got this European guy there on the training ground. I wouldn't be surprised if Nolan's thinking, "No, hands off. You don't come near this. This is our own environment. That's separate to the club." Just like you wouldn't want the chef coming out of the canteen having a kickabout with the boys on the training ground, but you know that you're in the kitchen, just like the chef wouldn't like it. Van Wan-Bissaka rocked up in the kitchen and said, I'm going to whip up a meal. No, get out of the kitchen. This is my job. This is my territory. You get out on the training pitch. That's it. Everyone has their roles. And I think Steiden possibly interfered in the environments that he wasn't welcome in. And I think that's what he was guilty of. However, in his defense, it's something they do in Germany. You know, the director of football or someone will often sit in the dugout during games so he can hear what the coaches are saying, because he needs to evaluate how that coach is performing. And the best way to do it is to be there. So I have a lot of sympathy for him. I think it was too much too soon under an owner that probably didn't even buy into it. It was forced upon him by Daniel Kutinsky. So we've got a chairman getting told what to do by someone and he doesn't want to do it. And I think this is the end result. So I think what we've got now is possibly the best way forward for when Sullivan is at the club. But the issue is attracting the players. I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, I wouldn't mind betting that Chef's faster than any of our current midfielders, by the way. So I'm all up for giving him a game, quite frankly. In terms of the director of football model, we'll get there. And we will get it. Just might not be for a while. All the top clubs have got them, and there's a reason for that. It's the way things have got to be done, and any remnants of resentment that there might be in the old English game, if you want, from having a director of football, will gradually dissipate, because you'll see that there certainly was no bother from the players that West Ham have brought in from overseas for a director of football being there. They would expect it, and they would
ownership as well, isn't it? Once the ownership changes, and not necessarily just because Sullivan is Sullivan. I mean, probably coming out of the hands of an English owner.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
and
for
going
sure.
into the hands of a different nationality and a different culture of owner who says, "Hang on a minute, you don't have a director of football. That's ridiculous. Why would you not have one? Put one in immediately." And I think that's once that happens. But the problem is, as you know, we'll just be so far behind. By the time we start to do it, clubs will have moved on to something else, possibly.
Yeah, but I think when that happens, it's not like we'll have to go through the stages. We'll just jump to whatever the latest thing is when that eventually does happen. I think the other owners of the other clubs can't claim to have an encyclopedic knowledge, but I don't think that there is a from Kroenke at Arsenal. I don't think he wants to be involved in transfers. I don't think he sees himself as a budding football manager. And people will watch this, and some people will remember Ron Nodes. Ron Nodes was the Crystal Palace chairman who actually did appoint. In the end, he did appoint himself as manager. I mean, I'm not talking about 100 years ago here. I remember it happening, right? I think by and large, you look at Sheikh Mansour at Manchester City. He doesn't want. He's no desire to be involved in selecting players or picking what he thinks. He probably doesn't have an opinion on his preferred tactics or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure you could go through the Premier League and find that to be the case. So I think probably one of the biggest problems we do have is we do have a chairman who enjoys that stuff, who enjoys the negotiating, enjoys buying players. And so, I mean, eventually that obviously won't happen, and we will. And I think when that happens, whatever the latest fad is, we'll just immediately go in at that. And we are not the biggest club in the world, but we are a big enough club to go out and get an experienced director of football. It will come one day. I just hope, like you, in this upcoming window, we're able to sign the players that not only that the squad needs and that the club needs, and hopefully part of that is also what Graham Potter needs. But hopefully we get that done.
Right, time for you to get involved. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The questions there from Andy, as many of you can answer it as possible. That would be appreciated. Comment below for the section's there for a reason. So get involved. If you enjoyed this video, though, and you fancy a little bit more of what myself and Gonzo are doing, you can go to patreon.com/HammersChat. Links in the description below and the pinned comments as well. From £3.60 per month to unlock new content plus other benefits as well. Giveaways, prediction competition, store discount. There's a lot. Go have a little look, and you can even try it for free for a week. You have to give us a penny. You can try it for a week and access all the content that we put up there and see if it's for you. So massive thank you to anyone who does support us. Less than £1 a week. We think it's good value. Without Patreon, we wouldn't be able to produce these videos on YouTube. It's simple as that. But if you enjoyed this one, drop a like on the video by clicking thumbs up. Subscribe to HammersChat, myself and Gonzo. Catch you in a bit.